I am willing to share my information. I just want to give you a brief introduction before Dr. Pere presents us his experience in route committees. If you remember in the last webinar that we held with ACI-LAC on traffic, we saw that to collaborate between stakeholders was a fundamental part of developing traffic at the airports, especially under this current situation where we have very depressed traffic and the countries are more and more delaying opening up borders. We also saw that airlines more and more are looking for impacts beyond financial incentives. For instance, support in marketing, which is something that must be done, yes, collaborating with all stakeholders of the industry. We also mentioned the capacity that airport operators have to lead these meetings, this collaboration, because airport encompasses all stakeholders. They have all the information, they have developed communications channels with all agencies. And finally, delving into the Latin American region, we also saw that collaboration was something that was new in many cases. In many airports, it was all specific quarterly, daily routine meetings, but it was not a space where decisions were made, where interests were aligned to everyone together attack the market aspects. So from this challenge, we identified in our previous webinar and the interest of some participants and collaboration between stakeholders, then we decided together with ACI to set up this webinar. But now going into more professional experiences and collaboration aspects. So we have Gilberto, Omar, and Pera to explain. In our case, Pera, director of AtaWorks Aviation, current field instructor, also collaborator with us in fair consulting and developing routes. I think he will bring us very good experience in his work, collaborating with several airports in Spain and routes and collaboration, and especially with a focus and committee for developing routes created in Barcelona, which is very experienced in collaboration aspects, and Pera was involved in this committee and certainly will provide us a lot of knowledge of his experience. Without any further ado, I give him the floor. Thank you very much, Andreu. Good morning to everyone. Good afternoon in Barcelona, in Spain. First of all, thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to speak to all of you in the webinar. I will introduce myself briefly. I have a hybrid profile, a bit strange, a bit more unusual. My main activity historically has been academia. I'm a professor in air transportation management in France, United Kingdom, and more recently, instructor of economics, Open University of Catalonia, Spain. And besides this, I lead a consultancy firm, AtaWorks Aviation. We are a limited group of persons where we participate in different various projects, different types of projects, but many times in developing routes. And one of the issues or points that characterizes us, we are flexible since we are not that big. We are a personalized service, but on the other hand, we have commercial interests like many of us here. Basically, we offer independent consultancies based on data on facts. And this is what our customers are interested on. With Flair, we've been collaborating now for a while. And in developing routes, we always try to work together. Having said this, I summarize here briefly my experience during the last 2 years. These have been the projects we have elaborated in the last 2 years. They're the route development projects that are very different. In the first place, we have Barcelona. I participated as head of the analysis team for the master plan of route development in Barcelona that is developed every 2 years. As you all know, it's a well-known case. Andreu has mentioned this case. It's a large airport, 50 million passengers more or less, where the challenge basically is once you were able to expand the routes, which was the main objective as an airport, that did not have a full service airline in the past. So the challenge we found was to overcome, how to overcome the maturity of the market, how to overcome opening up more routes and increase frequencies. This was the status that we had in Barcelona back then. Barcelona is an airport that in its category in 2017-18 was named the airport with most growth in its category. So we believe effectively the work we did from the Routes Committee had good results, and we could see it clearly. Another example of a different case is Sevilla. Sevilla is an important capital in Spain, not only from the economic point of view, but in tourism. And it has an airport that in 2018, well, they asked us to work on the master plan for developing routes. And on that same year, it was awarded by ACI as the airport of highest growth in its category. There, I participated as director of the plan, and an analysis. The challenge of this airport basically was how to maintain growth after an expansion, an important expansion of routes in Europe, to continue with this growth and expand geographically development towards Eastern Europe. Apparently, it's simple, but obviously there are always some ceilings we need to overcome. Around 6 million in Europe, this is a difficult point. More recently, in 2019, I elaborated to get also the plan for developing routes of A Coruña. The case of A Coruña is interesting. It's an airport system where there are 3 airports. Among them, they compete. Demand is fragmented. There's a series of particularities. There are challenges that are important. And in this sense, the year we worked with them, they were the airport or of most growth in the Galicia airport system. And we'll hear the challenge, especially, they had been working on from a tradition of subsidies of routes, a very important one. And the challenge was, how do we start so that these routes are sustainable financially speaking without the need of aids? And this is where we try to help them, besides also expanding the connections in Europe. And we look for adjustments and schedules that there were existing flights to hubs like Heathrow, so they could not take advantage of the connectivity. So on the one hand, we decided to increase flights, but we also, in this airport, increased efforts to work in quality aspects. Sometimes small changes in schedule or to negotiate changes in schedule with the airlines allow you to expand. More importantly, your access to intercontinental destinations through hubs. And finally, a totally different airport in Andorra. We also worked there in 2019, where basically the idea was to try to develop a growth plan that was realistic. Sometimes it's a small airport, let's say, in a mountainous area with with a very small local market where specific actors had promised big developments out of proportion, unrealistic. So what's important is to go one step at a time and to consolidate these steps so we can have this sustainable growth in time, which is what makes an airport grow. And here, that was the challenge, to look for ways so that growth would be safe and to eliminate that speech that we had big headlines on the newspapers, but after a few months, uh, things were negative because these things had not worked properly. So summarizing the experience of the last 2 or 3 years, well, it's been very varied. We have worked in different sizes airports with different particularities. And in this sense, it was something that I wanted to emphasize before going into the Barcelona case. We need to be flexible, and there is no unique single solution for all airports, which is what some companies try to do, work on a single solution. In this sense, what Andreu asked me is that I emphasize the importance of collaboration of the stakeholders. If we look at these three big cases where we worked in the last 2 years, there is something important to say here. We have detected there is like a continuum here, and the evolution of the stakeholders, how stakeholders combine with each other. Barcelona would be the ideal case. It's a situation, but before you reach the case of Barcelona, you need to take several steps in a safe manner and being clear what is the final objective. And we need to know it's not going to be a matter of 1 year. This is long-term work, and this long-term work provides good results. So what we found in A Coruña was that it's true. There were very good relationships between the stakeholders, but they were not visible. They were not structured either. And then there were occasional meetings, there were phone calls, they called each other. The Chamber of Commerce spoke to the tourism agency had a good relationship with the airport. Everybody knew more or less each other, but it was not visible for the sector, for the airlines. It was not visible for the public. And then it was mostly informal relationships. This did not help to structure the strategies that would be tangible, that take you towards success. And in some points in time, there were differences of opinion. Uh, well, with a better relationship, you could square them off. In this case, our recommendation was that they try to build upon what they already had, to try to institutionalize their existing relationships. And you must do it in a more structured and more visible manner. And this is a bit what we had in Sevilla. In Sevilla, there was a work table It met a couple of times a year. It was visible to the public. And here, mostly the tourism agency participated, the municipality, and the airport concessionaire, but they also invited external agents, big companies of the city. They tried to align operators so that all stakeholders would have the same information. And they tried to compile information from the economic stakeholders and touristic agents of the city. Nonetheless, the problem of this table and their challenge was that not all stakeholders participated equally. There was a stakeholder who led more than the others. In this case, it was the tourism agency. And then there was no budget. Every stakeholder endeavored their own efforts considering their budget and interests. So it's one more step. But back then, certainly because of the size of the airport and the expansion level they required, they needed a committee with a bit more muscle, more power. And this is what we have in Barcelona. What we have in Barcelona, I will explain now in detail. This is a committee that is clearly institutionalized. It's visible to the industry and public. It acts as a single window for airports and the other stakeholders. It aligns together the efforts of all stakeholders. And one thing which is important, and certainly one of the keys of the good functioning, external functioning, even though the different stakeholders that participate in the committee have a budget, have different sizes, all of them have the same power, the same right to vote, and they all contribute the same economically speaking. There's no disbalance of power in the committee. This means, well, this is important because this shows that the stakeholders provide efforts to overcome past tendencies or trends or prior power dynamics, and they endeavor efforts to join together to work towards a common objective. Another characteristic they have is that this Roots Committee is operated by a company or entity that is independent. It's none of these stakeholders here. And it does contribute to expert independent analyses so that this makes it that decisions are more technical than political. But there is political support, which is also needed. You need political support. But there's a technical office with a budget that functions properly, works by itself, and leads the committee and analyses and negotiations with the airlines. So there's a joint steering committee, and there's this company that develops the project. So basically, in the Roots Committee, there are four stakeholders. They contribute with their budget and votes. It would be the airport operator, the regional Catalunya government, and then the municipality of Barcelona and the Chamber of Commerce. And these four stakeholders provide an economic contribution, an equal one, and this economic contribution is used so that GPA company operates the Development Roots Committee. And besides this, there are different stakeholders of the region. that are consulted, but they don't have the right to vote, let's say. The airport of Barcelona, logistic office of Barcelona, which is the Catalan office for exports, Barcelona Activa, which is the company of the municipality of Barcelona for local development, Turismo Barcelona, which is a mixed agency, public-private PPP for developing tourism in the city. Well, as you can see, the relationship is very clear, very structured. The map of stakeholders is clear, and it's clear who must carry out the work. There's a series of basic principles that structure this relationship. They're all key in the success. The objectives are marked basically based on analyses, on data. An important part of the budget is for buying quality data, to have a data of good quality. So in this fashion, we can define what are the objective routes, what is the roadmap. In this sense, as I was saying before, decisions are basically technical, and obviously with the accompaniment and approval of the stakeholders, but the decisions basically are technical. Every 2 years, besides the work that is done regularly, every 2 years, they work on a strategic plan for the roadmap. What are the objectives, the routes, objectives, airline objectives, and the specific plan they have. The plan will be to focus on expanding routes or in improving quality with more frequencies in existing markets. Well, all of this is developed in this strategic plan that is carried out every 2 years. Well, on the other hand, there are regular meetings every 2 months, besides the regular phone contacts. On the other hand, I mentioned this before, the committee acts as a single unique window for the airlines. There's no confusions. Relationships with the airlines are clear. The airport operator also is clear that for new routes, especially for long radius, which is the main objective of the Routes Committee of Barcelona, the main stakeholder is the Routes Committee. It's not necessarily the team that develops routes of the operator. And this is translated, for instance, in the conferences and routes discussions, we go with a stand like AENA, which is the operator of Barcelona Airport. They have their stand that provides services to the different airports of its network. But besides, there is a stand of Barcelona where there are members, and they travel to the member conference of the 4 stakeholders, the operator, Chamber of Commerce, and the municipality. But it's all coordinated from the office of the committee. And something else which is important, the media, press, communications is also coordinated from the committee. So when a new route is launched, all of these stakeholders are visible, are present, and we always try to prevent unnecessary frictions that could deviate attention from what's really important. Or in this case, for the Committee of Barcelona, the main objective is to expand the routes roadmap, international roadmap. Well, on my behalf, what I've tried to provide you with a brief summary in these 10, 15 minutes that I had allotted, but it will be a true pleasure to answer any question or so we can hold a discussion on my topic. Thank you. Thank you, Pera, for your presentation. Before going on to the next one, I want to remind you that the questions will be received in this email address. We would thank you to send your question and the person you're addressing the question to. Without any further ado, I want to give the floor to Gilberto Salcedo, Vice President of Tourism of ProColombia, who will share the successful case of his institution. Thank you, Gilberto. Thank you, Francisco. Thank you very much. To the other panelists too. Very interesting presentation, Pere. First of all, a special greeting to ACI-LAC and everyone listening in today in different parts of the world. I would like to start with a phrase that I heard in the introduction to this webinar. Definitely, sometimes we see larger, better, bigger opportunities beyond incentives. I think this is the purpose today, to tell you about one of these experiences that beyond incentives, with a very practical focus, a collaboration focus of collective construction. Well, we have been developing this in Colombia specifically to strengthen not only the ecosystem, aeronautical system of the country, but in general, tourism, and why not the different economic sectors that benefit, obviously, from connectivity and more capillarity that we have in Colombia. Having said this, my presentation basically has three parts. It's quick and practical. It will be centered. The first part, I want to tell you what ProColombia is, what we do, and what those services are that are associated with our mission and our vision. Second, I will tell you also that taking into account current times, what are our plans at this time in the framework of the recovery and reactivation post-COVID-19, and where at the end of the day, we join together also consistently, coherently, the scheme I will present today of the connectivity tables. And as Francisco mentioned well, it's our humble opinion. It's been a successful opinion. And finally, to tell you a bit how this articulation mechanism works. Well, first of all, I want to tell you ProColombia is the agency of the national government in charge of promoting not only attracting direct foreign investment and non-mineral energy exports, but tourism. All of this with the purpose to add more value to our country brand in our commercial activities abroad, and in general, to improve our reputation in Colombia. Here, a bit what you see are like the three big chapters of services that we offer from ProColombia. One of them, you can see them in the purple circles in regard to supplying relevant information. Second, in reference to training, capacity building that we have for stakeholders, and obviously everything that is required for promotional activities. In each one of these chapters, you can see linked a series of specific services. Those dotted ones, those dotted circles are related specifically with promotion of connectivity. Here we have, for instance, supply of information, Colombia in the past has been endeavoring efforts in training, capacity building, but economic efforts to come with better information, online information from different suppliers, providers, GDSs of different platforms that will allow us to count in real time with this relevant information, not only for ProColombia, for the whole system, for the whole ecosystem, and so that and for our stakeholders, they need to access this information to make better decisions. Also, promotional materials, images bank, the media plan we have throughout the world. Through Pauta, we work in our destinations, and we keep this current in the main markets where travelers come to our country. In terms of training, we offer an immense portfolio and permanent portfolio to the stakeholders of different types. Just to mention an example, we have a program for forming exporting capacities that is very relevant, especially during current times, and promotional activities, business rounds, press trips, workshops, entrepreneurial support plans, our presence in international affairs, just to mention some of these tools, day-to-day tools, as I was mentioning before. Anyway, what's important here is that this promotion is done permanently and hand in hand with the stakeholders that are in our ecosystem. And here, as I was saying, I want to tell you a bit what our objectives are, what those big axes are, where we execute actions for reactivation once the situation is overcome. Well, we have a new operational phase now. First of all, we are convinced in ProColombia that connectivity is on the first line of the reactivation plans, not only in Colombia, but the world. From our mission, from our purpose of international promotion, we're facilitating connectivity, obviously with biosafety standards, deepening further in policies, improving tariffs, charges with the users. Here, we already have a specific actions. This is not a plan that will be executed. This is a live plan under execution. We have achieved things like we have reduced taxes to added value on air tickets. That was in approximately 19% of the final value. And now, in 2021, will be in 5%. This reduction in taxes, obviously, tries to reactivate demand, is seeking to reactivate air traffic, and obviously tourism in the country. Likewise, promotion plans and campaigns addressed towards the airlines, specifically to leverage that return, that coming back. And as I was mentioning too, we have a whole plan of providing tools to our entrepreneurs that includes all entrepreneurs of the tourism chain, from airlines, operators, hotels, travel agencies. And here, this program of forming exporters, training exporters, we have digitalized it, and this was adapted to current times. And only for you to have a reference point, the previous year, we trained 10,048 persons throughout our national geography, all our departments in Colombia. In about 8-9 weeks, we overcame this number with our digital number, and we continued on site. Obviously, a whole segmented promotions plan. It's more than 263 activities we have in our main markets throughout the world. And specifically around today's topic, we have a chapter, a special chapter in synergies and alliances. I think this is where we set up these collaboration schemes and where they acquire additional relevance. Here, obviously, the idea, not only in the framework of other markets, but also internally in this ecosystem of airlines, institutions, destinations, we are strengthening this articulation of actions, of investments, administration aspects for an accelerated recovery. I mentioned this recovery plan because we're totally convinced that these collaboration schemes today more than ever are very important, and they will add to the recovery process. Go ahead, Francisco. And here, as I was saying, in terms of recovery or reactivation of air operations in Colombia, just some additional relevant information for this forum. First of all, we already count with biosafety protocols in the aeronautical airport sectors. Additionally, there's a scheme for appointing different destinations within the country, Colombia, for opening up airports. And with this, obviously, opening up air routes, this implies a validation by national authorities, thereby starting operations. In the pipeline, we already have the first route that will be activated, and we are learning still, but at the same time, we are trying to do things correctly because we are convinced that trust, and we are convinced that the good application of protocols will also be a good leverage, an important leverage for promoting and going back to air connectivity. In terms of international connectivity, starting the sales ticket is authorized after June 1st, starting to fly in September 1. This is subject to air demand that is available, of course, evidently, according to how the opening is coming along with other countries. We see with the European Union, for instance, that there's a list of countries with different conditions that are basically centered on reciprocity, taking proper measures with biosafety aspects. And third, depending on the levels of the pandemias, different situations or similar situations in the countries. Here, the situation in Colombia, we have around 69 airports in the country. Nonetheless, 16 of them under concession. And through these concessions, we move, if I'm not wrong, about 82% of the total traffic of passengers in Colombia. On your right, you can see all concessions, all airport administrators with whom we have this magnificent articulated work scheme. And here, as I was saying, what is the relevance? What is the meaning this has for us in ProColombia, this scheme of the connectivity table? First of all, these connectivity tables operate in Medellin, Bogota, and Cartagena. We try to hold monthly meetings at least. In ProColombia, we've been doing this for more than 4 years. As you can see, the core, the mission of these tables, composed, as I was saying, by airports, destinations, bureaus, by the association, is to seek initially more efficiency in how we capture routes and increase connectivity. This is very important. I just want to mention what we saw between 2019 and 20. 2019 in Colombia, in a coordinated, harmonious process of routes, we almost achieved 17 new routes in the country. So you can see how it evolves positively. Only between January and February of this year, we already had confirmed 10 additional routes. Then we believe that this scenario has all the value, not only in terms of the effort but also in order to share this information and participating in scenarios. For instance, participating in fairs, articulation, as we can see here also, of strategies that the airports lead and that we accompany, of course, from ProColombia. And so we've been able to have more participation in these platforms that definitely are very necessary and definitive so we can increase connectivity in the country. And additionally, maybe this value I've been mentioning permanently in coordination between the actors and their contributions. How we don't provide different incentives or attractions to consolidate connectivity. No, but how at the end of the day, how we can all add efforts and offer one single package from the different destinations and different departments and municipalities of the country, guaranteeing obviously a proper promotion of the. And as I was saying, I think the key words are participation in key scenarios, sharing information, and definitely aligning and promotion. This makes us add and complement efforts between the different stakeholders in charge of this mission. And this evidently has been translated into a series of achievements in the framework of this. One of these achievements, national awards of ProColombia in the prior year, and the category of air connectivity. This was the experience of Cartagena de Indias Corporation and in this connectivity table of Cartagena, where they, in a coordinated, visible manner, they were able to reduce the airport charges. I don't know if you know, but in this case, Cartagena, due to errors of the formulation of the concession, started to increase way too high the airport charges in time, which is the main income of the concessionaire too. So they were losing competitiveness for this destination. So together with this cooperation, we look for solutions to see how we could reduce these airport charges. This value that influences, increases final value of air tickets and diminishes competitiveness. And we were able to go from an airport charges of $90 back then that was very high and was not competitive and almost doubled the highest in the world. And it went down to $35, that without being the cheapest of all, well, it was average in Colombia, and Cartagena recovered competitiveness. So this next year improved by 40% on air traffic. So it's clear this articulated work, how we could lower charges to have more competitiveness. Likewise, together with ProColombia, the Medellin Bureau, we support Aerocivil in the ICANN event in 2020. Recently, also Ultra Airline for Madrid to Cali and Cartagena. So this added to the new routes I mentioned for the beginning of this year. And finally, another important achievement, taking into account the relevance of an event like Routes Americas. So we accompanied OPAIN to Routes Americas to bring more to assist to Routes Americas. So everyone meets. So everyone would meet and they would receive all the information and all details so they could activate routes in the different destinations. And as I was saying, what's most relevant, what's most important in the midst of this scheme that is not any different then rowing together, that acting in a synchronous manner together, in a coordinated manner, and to build solutions towards the future so we can increase connectivity routes. And evidently, with this, we can benefit, as I said at the beginning, not only connectivity and transportation per se, but tourism, and additionally, the economy of the country. For us, it's very important, all these scenarios. I think this practice that we're looking into today, besides presenting it as a successful case, I would say it's a case where we learned in the country, since we're relatively new in tourism aspects, because of prior tourism safety aspects. Now, this has provided opportunities to accelerate and grow further in routes, frequencies. Well, and the only thing left besides this presentation, we want to thank everyone that in Colombia is part of this important work scheme and success. So thank you, Francisco, and to all participants. Thank you, Gilberto, for sharing ProColombia experience. We go on to the last presentation of today. Omar Miranda, Pacifico Airport Group. Go ahead, please. Thank you, Francisco. Thank you very much to all the participants. Well, a lot has been said about what is the spirit, what is the reason for a Roots Committee. What I will mention this morning, I will tell you about a didactic presentation we have towards those new entities in our destinations that we incorporate along the way, explaining to them why it's important to have a Roots Committee, to have an organism like this, to form synergies and to go hand in hand in development of every airport and destination. First of all, we are an airport group that operates 14 airports in Mexico and Jamaica. Among our investors, we have ENA, the largest airport operator in the world. We have a diversification of markets, business, and different markets, technical markets too. As you know, Mexico is in the northern part. It has borders where we have the biggest passing through of people in the world with the United States, which is very important for our airports. Yet we will talk our most symbolic, successful case, the airports of Los Cabos, where we can be proud. It's been hard work for many years, more than 10 years, that together where we have a Roots Committee and we have successes. Los Cabos Airport in the last year reached almost 6 million passengers. This is an airport that has had constant increases, sustained increases, except for some years where we had some natural disasters like Hurricane Odile. But except for these instances, we've had constant growth. It's a tourist airport that competes with other airports in the Americas and the world. So we can say we are very proud of the airport. As I was saying, my presentation is so you can see how we work with the different entities, tourism, the government, and so forth. For us, there are two important parts here to present this Roots Committee. One part that we develop in GAP, we develop aerial routes. We do this in-house, we develop this, and the other part, so not to see beyond what we discuss in our daily work. We outsource a consultancy from New York that helps us for specific aspects of market calibrations and other specific aspects. The rest of the work is done in-house. We believe it's an extremely important investment. We will talk about investments and contributions of each entity and participant in these types of committees. As you know, well, the Roots Committee works on market intelligence. We look into performance, and we work in an action plan to work on the business cases. And then obviously we link this with an incentives program. Well, air development aspects. Well, as we all know, the destination doesn't make the airport. The airport makes the destination. We need to know our destination first, what it will offer, what type of traveler we want, what kind of passenger uh, uh, they're thinking on, what destinations. Well, to see what airline then we address our efforts towards to. Well, the next question is the airport prepared to receive this passenger, this type of passenger? Does it have the infrastructure mechanisms to have a friendlier passenger service that is more efficient, especially now during current times, especially towards the future? It's going to be a challenge in aviation. We need to be updated with all of these aspects. And then we go back to supports we can have, and not only to provide money, but do it intelligently. It's not only about giving money, providing money around the place. This is more or less the same. Well, we will look more into destinations. Mostly it's about knowing our markets. Of all the network of GAP, every airport has its own characteristics. Every market is different. It's important to know our markets, our surroundings, environment around the airport. We need to know who our allies are, our main stakeholders, and then depart from this towards two premises. One, to keep the current traffic, increase it, and this will generate additional income and destinations too. So the idea is to have sustainable development at short, mid, and long term. Basically, what we do in the Roots Committee, I will explain who presides it and how it actually works in our internal organization. But basically, we have three premises. Quantitative analyses, we need to know the destinations, our surroundings, environment. We talked about knowing the airport. And once we're on the same page, that we know who's the passenger, who the travelers are, once we know what type of markets we will attend, then we have the synergy. Synergy comes next to identify our stakeholders, whom we will invite to set up a roots committee. Then we have the third one, incentives. I go back to synergy, which is one of the core points to set up a roots committee. We basically invite those stakeholders that can have active and not political participation. Perea mentioned that even though politics are important, but sometimes they can come out of the proper context. And in most countries, politics many times are used for other purposes. We have been able to advance in this sense. Our stakeholders have voice, vote, but also active and committed participation. It's not only about having a committee just for the sake of it, for requirements. Also, the Roots Committee in Mexico is not an obligation. It's not an obligation demanded by the state, by the municipalities. No, it's an initiative of GAP. It's our own initiative. It's an initiative that arises in view of the needs to agree with the destinations and economic entities of these destinations. So this makes it that it has even more validity, fresher validity, more real validity. And then we will talk about incentives. We will tell you later on about the incentives that destinations and GAP provides for. We spoke of the integration of the Roots Committee. Regularly, we in the Roots Committee, the first stakeholders that are fundamental are the tourism entities. This is an example of Los Cabos Airport, which is just mostly tourism, but in a destination that combines tourism and business travelers. We would have all those government and private entities on the commercial side. In this case, in the Roots Committee of Cabos, the one that presides it is the Tourism Secretariat, tourism entities of the entity. It's a Secretary of Tourism who's the president. Then we have a figure, a secretary that is the airport group, presided basically by the administrator of the airport. The administrator of the airport is the secretary, and then going on down, we have a series of jobs for the organization. And as you can see, we're linking industrial chambers, hotel associations. Our Roots Committee is set up so much by the government and private side too. How we operate per se? Well, we need to meet 2 or 3 times a year. We believe it's more than enough. Sorry, somebody came in our online, but it's okay now. Okay, we meet 2 or 3 times per year. We believe it's enough, especially if there is a new service or flight. The idea of meeting 2 or 3 times per year is in order to see how we're doing with passenger traffic, how we maintain it, how we maintain those services we currently have, and what are the future services that, according to Roots development that we do in GAP, that we need. Once we do our analysis of the needs of the airport for connectivity, then we go to the Roots Committee to align it with the whole committee to know what this new destination is doing, how many new hotel rooms we have now, especially now that we are with this pandemia. We have had some conversations, not on site. We do it virtually to see what are the actions we're endeavoring jointly. Incentives. As I said, these are incentives from GAP. Normally, we have a budget for incentives for new routes, 3 types of incentives we have. New routes, already routes already that are operating, that need support, and those routes that we believe could be in danger of leaving or ending according to our market intelligence work, and we believe we should support. So these are the incentives, typical incentives of an airport, uh, the passenger fee, and then airport services. We have other types of incentives, marketing, marketing support, and seats guarantee. We do this in the airports and outside the airports, independent of tourism entity support. Seats guarantee, we have it here, but we don't believe much in this. We believe the stakeholders just lose competitiveness because they don't develop new routes or just relax too much. But we include it, but because at some point in time they might need this seats guarantee, but we don't guarantee it 100%. We talked about Los Cabos, the success of Los Cabos. This is a brief example of a successful route. The TUI Group is a world's important operator, as you all know. We were in discussions with TUI in the past to operate Los Cabos. One of the doubts back then was, okay, I'm a tour operator. I need you to go to my partners so we can start doing business. Since we already had the routes committee, it was very easy to form this synergy together with TUI. We came to our main stakeholders, and they all got together, and together with incentive support, we were able to achieve this network. Fortunately, in Los Cabos, there's only 3 associations with 2 tourism associations and GAP. These are the 3 main stakeholders of this routes committee. I want to show you this chart. I only have a few examples here so you can see basically, as an example, what has happened in Los Cabos. As you can see, in 2014, only then we have a reduction in traffic because of Hurricane Odile. I have some airport operators here, only 3. I want it to be simple with this chart here. So in 2010, we have Sunway. So we've been working with more than 10 years with this committee. It's complicated to have a new operator, to bring a new service. These are success examples we brought jointly with our operators. Not only GAP has done it alone, together it's been done with the routes committee and destinations. As you can see, we have constant growth, and this is thanks to the synergy we have with the routes committee. I insist, it's very important, this participation. In our airports, we try to replicate this committee model. Every committee has different characteristics according to the market, according to the different governments and tourism actors. At the beginning, it's difficult to agree. There's some resistance sometimes. There's some political aspects that intervene. And something I need to emphasize about Los Cabos committee is permanence. Besides the political changes we can have in the Baja California state, we have had permanence under the same spirit of cooperation. We've had different sectors of tourism, different secretaries of tourism, and different government executives. In the same airport, we've had changes of staff too, turnovers, which is normal throughout the years. but nonetheless, it's a successful case because it's not, it has never politicized itself. Uh, there are no the publicity. There is no much publicity, political publicity. Our objective is to develop the destination, and we do it jointly with marketing plans, publicity plans in Europe, United States, uh, and we agree upon things hand in hand. And basically, this is the example I wanted to introduce. We believe it's very interesting. We've also had other cases where it has not been so easy. It hasn't been so easy. We're working on this in Jamaica. It's been more difficult, but we continue uh, working there and in other destinations too. Thank you very much. Basically, this is our case in Los Cabos. Thank you very much, Omar, for your presentation. Very interesting. As you could see, we kind of are above our time. There are questions for some of you. There are a few questions. I will start with you, Omar, a question I received for you. What actions is GAP working on to reactivate routes with the COVID-19 pandemic? Very important. I have not finished the question, excuse me. Market intelligence for specific routes. How does the routes committee participate? Go ahead, Omar. Excellent question. First of all, when we started to observe the situation, all the parked airplanes, well, we went to the routes committee. We looked into the expectations. We saw the stoppages, the lockdowns at the airports, hotels. We started to work on joint agreements. At the airport, we tried to help the airlines with their fixed costs, like for parking aircraft. This was a fixed cost. So we helped them during April, May, and June for 3 months. We exempted these costs, also leases that airlines could have, and we provided land support services. We knew these fixed costs would be important, so we started to support them there. For July, for this year, we started to set up policies. Since aircraft is already flying, we analyzed those routes that could need support. So we did a roadmap analysis of 100% of our routes. And we identified those where it was going to be more difficult for them to start up or advance. So this month, we started providing support incentives according to a specific traffic percentage. And the support is upfront. We are awarding funds to the airlines so they can start to fly. Later on, we will modify this policy of incentives. We cannot project it at long term because we don't know yet what's going to happen with this virus. So these are the actions we are working on. And on the routes committee, we inform the actions we are working on. This is important. Sanitation actions and sanitation actions at the destinations and airports. In Los Cabos, for instance, I mentioned Los Cabos. In Los Cabos, jointly, we had the World Tourism Council. As you know, it's a stamp for reliable tourism destinations in terms of sanitation and health issues we're working on jointly. So these are the actions that basically we're working on. Thank you, Omar. I received another one for you when you spoke about the concept of seats guarantee. Can you explain more or less about this concept of guaranteeing seats with the incentives? Yes, regularly. It's not that we don't believe much in 100% seat guarantees. Well, this is paying an airline for them to bring us a specific destination and guarantee their break-even cost for a flight. So if the airline identifies that their break-even will be 80% of their occupancy factor of their aircraft, well, what the guarantee does, well, for the first years or months, I will guarantee that 80%, so you will fly. We have a bit of a different formula. We say, in the case we will provide a guarantee, if out of that 80% you only reach 55%, well, I will guarantee the difference, but for a limited time until the market is developed and advances properly. The truth is we prefer to diversify incentives. We don't operate so much with guarantees. We prefer a diversified support and not only for break-even of the seats. Thank you, Omar, for your answer. I beg you to be brief with your answers. I have one for each of the other panelists. We start with Vera. Many directors in airports believe that the developing routes post-COVID, they believe that airlines will naturally go to the airports without any efforts. In your concept, how true or wrong is this concept? Well, we have done rounds of interviews in the industry at airports and airlines, and every case is different, but it looks like, I would say, that there's an agreement between the airline directors. They agree that it will be necessary to endeavor efforts from the destinations in regards to supports, at least from the European point of view. Basically, we talked with the European directors, airport directors, and well, large airports at the beginning, well, would have advantages because well, the big airports will generate more spaces. But on the other hand, since it's possible that the yields drop, it's possible that this yield will only be in the large markets. So we need to endeavor more efforts, especially in those regional market airports where they live mostly on tourism. So we believe developing routes must be in a structured manner, and we must have a clear structure in regard to a mix. In what Omar was just saying, we need to be clear. What is the toolbox of support assistance you have for the airlines? I think this will be very relevant for recovery. Thank you. Vera, the last question for ProColombia, for Gilberto. We know that the situation in Colombia and in many countries of the region is complicated for air transportation, but there are other countries in the region that are already announcing opening dates. In the case of Colombia, we have pilot domestic cases. Could you share a bit from the Colombia's point of ProColombia's point of view, what you have done internally to start reopening the domestic and international markets? Thank you, Francisco. The point here is starting with the evolution we see here in Colombia, but elsewhere in the world. First of all, we're waiting to reactivate domestic flights and then international traffic, specifically between neighbors initially. Then we will extend it towards other areas in the hemisphere, and then transcontinental traffic. In this sense, even though our responsibility in ProColombia is not centered in domestic traffic, our core is in international promotion, but evidently in reactivating economic aspects, this is the point of departure for the region in general. So we are accompanying not only the formulation of policies here, but what's ideal. We would like to have a larger, broader opening besides the domestic markets, but we're looking for a balance, actually. Evidently, in protecting health, but also opening up gradually the economy. And here we have been accompanying the Ministry of Trade and we are also trying to look to have specific dates in regard to commercializing international air tickets. As I mentioned in my presentation, we are working on this. We want to set up a team together with airlines, airports. They all requested this opening so we can start selling the air tickets, and we will do so according to the evolution, and we will start opening up international air traffic on September 1st. This is not simple. I understand. I understand the position of the airline sector. I mean, they're right when they say, well, how will this be from one point to another when we have airlines that operate on a network? Well, we need to see this as a gradual process where we need to take steps forward. As I said, there's a first pilot project with a city in the eastern part of the country, Bucaramanga, and there's another one with Cucuta on the border of Venezuela, and soon we will start other operations, and all of this together with biosafety protocols and regulations that are being implanted. Thank you, Francisco. Thank you very much, Gilberto. And thank you to the panelists for answering the questions. We have received some more, but because of time constraints, we'll be resending your questions to the panelists, so they will answer by email. I just wanted to thank Omar, Gilberto, Pera, and all of you for your time, for preparing the presentations and sharing your experience. It's been of great interest for all of us. Thank you very much. May you have a good day. Thank you, Francisco. Our pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.